Hello and welcome to the channel. I'm Cindy Daychuck with Queen Bee Creations. Thanks for joining me. Now I happen to have thrifted this little table. So the cool thing about it is that it collapses down. It's got wide enough feet that it just stands on its own up this way even, but then it just all flattens out and sits like and it's like side table height. So very cool, all with a solid wood top. That's the bonus part. Usually a lot of this kind of design you get with metal. Now this particular finish you can see is kind of cracking a little bit. So as much as I'm going to paint this out, I'm not going to sand it down to the natural wood and stain it. I have other plans for it. Although you could certainly just sand it smooth, stain it, put a seal on it, and you're good to go that way if you wanted the wood and a black look. I'm not painting out the metal. It's in great shape. I'm just zhuzhing up the top. And considering that this was $5 less my 30% because it's Senior's Day today, I got it for $3.50. $3.50. Now, I got some other things today thrifting that I did not get a deal on. They were definitely priced a lot higher than you would normally see in a thrift store. But this one was a deal. So sometimes the deals are out there, even though some of the thrift store prices are getting crazy. And this was one of them. But I need to sand some of this. I do not need to sand it all to bare wood. I just need to sand until these kind of ripples of finish are smooth, because otherwise they're going to show in my painted surface. So I have apparently a very full sander that I need to go and empty before I start doing anything. And I'll go take that over to the garbage can. And then I'm gonna give it a bit of a sand. I'm gonna do that off camera because it's so noisy. And it's solid wood, so we don't need to worry about it. But I'm gonna get that done and then we'll come back and I'll tell you my plans for this. All right, I have this top sanded down. You can see how much I had to take off to get down to smooth and where it's not chipping anymore. What I want to do is paint it all out. Now I'm gonna use French Eggshell by Fusion. So I'm using an all-in-one paint just so I can get on with the rest of my life and what else I want to be doing. I have some other things that I want to be doing to this piece. I'm using the Smoothie brush by DIY, and I gotta tell you, I love the DIY brushes for the Fusion paint. They're nice and soft, and I get a really good smooth finish with them. And minimal brush strokes, which is great. And that's it for that already. I mean, no brushes fit into these containers very well, so this is no exception. But I'm gonna get 2 coats of this paint on, just so that I've got nice and good coverage. I just have to do the sides and the top. And the bottom is unfinished already, so there's no point in my doing other to it. Now you notice I'm not being super careful with my brush strokes here in terms of reworking the paint. My second coat, I will be much more careful about just doing in one line, but I'm not getting lots of streaks or brush strokes even as it is. And I just find this brush is a lot more forgiving with this paint than a stiffer brush may be. But I'll get my 2 coats on, let them dry, and then we'll be back to do a little zhuzhing. We've had overnight to dry on our tabletop. It's because I thumped it. What I have tried to do here, if that stays, is used my yardstick to kind of highlight where I need my transfer to go. Because as soon as I lift it to pull the backing off, I'm kind of lost. So what I've done is I've kind of measured tail to tail to kind of get it centered. And then I know roughly where the edge of the transfer has to go and the top of the transfer has to go. Just kind of eyeballing here, because once it's on, it's on. So what I'm looking at doing, this transfer does not fill the whole tabletop. And because this is kind of, I mean, it's got the rooster and the chicken, it's sort of a country theme, and I picked the duck egg blue because it's got that French kind of provincial country look to it. I have kind of started to pair these with one kind of overall feel. So what I'm looking at doing, once this is all transferred on, and it shouldn't be too difficult because I used that all-in-one paint, which means it's a sealed surface and the transfer loves it. So I'm just lifting up slowly in any little piece of the transfer, and in particular on the letters that I missed. I'm just ensuring that I go back and get. And it's just sometimes like the little tiny tips of the letters and things, and it just creates a crisper image. So, you know, as you're lifting, you can see if there's something still left on that transfer sheet, and enables you to go back and be able to do it. Don't peel it all off and look, because then lining it up is a major headache. So the bigger piece is no problem. Now I'm gonna leave that big piece and start going from the bottom, because I have little words down here along the bottom. And those again are where maybe I might have some issue with something not transferring fully. But yes, et voila. There we go. So you can see that with this transfer, I have a lot of white space. I could have cut these elements apart and spread them out more, had the rooster a little bit more over here, the chicken over a little bit more. But what I thought that I'd do, kind of in keeping with that French country look, is add some grain sack stripes. So, let me just get this over so that I can see what I'm doing here. In which case, I'm gonna take some painter's tape. And a lot of times, it is much easier to use your tape to measure than to try and kind of use a ruler to measure. So meaning, I am putting a row of tape down here, which is not going to be part of my stripes. It's going to be my white space, in essence, this blue. So there's no paint going on there. Now I need to decide how fat I want my lines to be, how many lines I want. And I'm thinking that what I'd like is a little thin line, and let me think. I'm just thinking what's going to be easiest, what's going to be hardest for me to do, and how much. So let me do this. I want to ensure that I have space on the side of this. So let me just make sure I've got that semi-straight happening here. So 3 1/4. And 3 1/4. Oh, pretty good eyeballing. Okay. It's nice when that works out. All right. ideally what I want is these to line up and to be the same width. All right, let me move this in just a little bit more here. Okay, better. All right. So what I can do is you can get some different sizes of tape. I'm gonna go check my stash to see if I have any skinny tape before I go any further, because that'll make my life easier to decide what I'm doing. But maybe just deciding, just experimenting here. So if I put one piece of tape here, this is where paint's gonna go. So I'm just using a little piece as my measure, my guide. I just wanna see if, and this is where some of the experimentation comes in. So I just wanna give you guys an idea. Forgive the thought process here, but just so that you know. All right, that just fits in there. That's where we're going. Okay. So to help me line this up, what I'm going to do is put 2 pieces of tape there. Then, because I want the big fat tape down the middle, I'm going to be able to line it up between them, and that'll be pretty good. So these are my first 2 stripes. Are gonna go over that exposed blue, right? So in both those spots. Then we'll worry about another stripe there. So I'm gonna do the same thing over here to be able to get this lined up. So I'm just using this tape as a guide to help me keep my big fat one down the middle relatively straight here. These ones get removed. You could just really drive yourself crazy with measuring, but it is what I said. It will just drive you crazy. All right, so we take those off. And then this becomes my paint lines. And I want those lines to go down over the sides, nice and tight, because for consistency's sake, I will also do my lines down the sides. So that's why I did longer tape than I needed. And you just want to burnish all of those edges to make sure that they're nice and crisp. Now, to make sure that my lines stay as crisp as possible, because often when you do maybe painting a stripe, you get some bleeding underneath those taped edges. One of the things that we did was we did that burnishing of the edges. The other thing that we're gonna do is we're just going to very lightly paint those edges in that same color that we've already painted. Let me get down that side. That we've already painted our base. So we're using our base color. So this way, if any paint is going to seep under that edge, it's going to be the same color as our base is, and we won't notice it as much. So I'm gonna get these all painted and wait for them to dry. And again, I don't need tons of paint, but I'm gonna wait for them to dry before we pull together the color that our stripes are gonna be. Now, for my color, this is my base color, which was the duck egg blue, or is that what it's called? It's called French eggshell. French eggshell, not duck egg blue. Same kind of thing. And I do have this color called Homestead Blue from Fusion as well, which I'm not sure is an always available color. And I've had it forever, so it is super thick. I want the stripes to be a little bit darker. Oh, maybe this is too thick now. Oh, it's very thick. What can I do? What can I do? I want this to be a little bit darker, but I don't want it too dark. Let me go see. This has gone too far. This is use a trowel. What I do have is a color by Melange. What color is this? Azure. Which again, see, it would just be too dark. And that's what I'm looking for. But it's an all-in-one paint as well. And I have no problem with mixing paint lines. So there you go. I'm just gonna do one little dip of the spoon and see what that does first. Know that this dries darker, right? Okay, so not quite as much of a contrast. Now my spoon is messy, but I'm just gonna do one dollop and see where that takes me. And I just put my entire arm into the paint lid. So let's put that away so I don't do it again. Okay, another dollop. And this is how it goes when you're mixing. Just do little bits, little steps. The only difference is you want to make sure that you do enough. So I've got my 2 stripes that I have to do on both sides, 2 coats on each, and then I have enough to do my next little stripe. So I would always start with my lightest color and add the dark to that, because adding the light, if I started with tons of the dark, I could be here all day. All right, I think because this dries darker, right? And I don't want it to be major, I'm thinking that might be okay. So I have my brush. And this is the tricky part, is remember, my lines are right in here. So let me get this painted on 2 coats, and then I'll bring you back when we start removing the paint, the tape. I decided that the coverage seemed to be okay with just 1 coat. So I don't like to wait for it to be fully dry, especially with an all-in-one paint, because then it's almost like I'm gluing the tape to it. I then pull the tape back, but I like to pull it toward my paint line. And that just helps kind of keep those edges nice and straight. So I'm just gonna get, where's the end? So this one I'm gonna peel this way. And then once we get the big one removed, so I'm just doing this one straight, decide whether or not I feel like I need to have an additional line in the middle. Right now it's kind of looking like I don't. And I love that color that we mixed up. It's just kind of a nice, it's there, but it's not dominating. Straight out of the can, it would have been too much for our finish, I think. All right, let me leave this to dry and decide whether I want a thin line in there. Sometimes it just might be overkill. Now, I thought that I would show you just kind of roughly here. Remember that homestead house that I said was way too thick? It was still, use the spoon to dig it up, but it was almost toast. I caught it just in time. So what I do, rather than wasting all of this paint, you can see that it's much more pliable now because I've pushed all of the edgings down in, and I took some of the Fusion top coat and added it in. Now, you do it a little bit at a time because it's going to be hard to get this back to smooth. So if you added tons of it, you're just going to end up with a lot of chunks. It's going to take you forever. And I do not have a blender that I want to put this in or have to clean out afterward. So I did one little squirt and I've been mixing it and I'm down to this chunky mess. I'm going to add another squirt in there and I'm going to mix that in. Now, this isn't this way going to become perfectly smooth for me to use on a piece that I want a really smooth finish on, but this is going to work perfectly fine for something that I want. Maybe some smalls where I'm going to do a deliberate kind of stippled, textured finish on. So rather than this being a complete waste of paint, I've brought it back and I'll keep it in mind now for a project where a nice chunky finish would work, where maybe this becomes my base coat and I can stipple it on with a chip brush, let it dry, and then do, waxes or other light washes over top. And this kind of chunky finish is going to work for me. Now that my paint has dried, I've been looking at this, I've decided I like the stripes exactly as they are. So I am just going to, our transfer, which came from the Brocade IOD transfer, I don't think I mentioned that earlier, has not been sealed. And this is going to be a tabletop. So rather than sealing with wax, I'm going to seal it with a top coat. I am using the Fusion top coat for this. And we're just going to get it sealed up and let it dry, and then we're ready to go. The number of top coats that you decide on is really up to you and dependent upon usage more than anything else. This is our finished little tabletop. Now, I had debated possibly putting a thin line of the blue in the middle there. And the more that I just looked at it without it, I liked it just like this. But you can see how planning for those lines allowed us to use up that white space from this transfer. So don't always think that your transfer has to go edge to edge. If you've got something smaller that you want to use that only takes up so much real estate, what else can you add that makes sense to design? Because this has that little farmhouse table kind of feel, and this is kind of killing my arm, but with the iron base and the solid wood tabletop, those farmhouse stripes just kind of work perfectly. Okay, popping it up like that, you can kind of see. A simple kind of process today, but again, one that's showing you don't have to do something kind of crazy major to something that you got inexpensively. $3.50 I paid for the table itself. So with that transfer and with some of the paint that I had already, I deliberately did not open a new jar of paint. I used what I had on the shelf to create a color that would work with it so that, again, there wasn't an additional expense incurred. So, really, this table came together for under $10 for me. So, you know, it allows me then to sell it fairly inexpensively. I don't have in mind what the price point would be, but you know, I'm able to get an okay return on this without, you know, it wasn't tons of effort on my part, so I'm not charging for tons of labor. The material costs were extremely low, so I can make this affordable for someone with limited space. You know, if you've got a booth or something, you have limited space in the sense that if you've got something that's taking up space and it's sitting for an extended length of time, then it's taking up space that you could have something else sitting there. You know, you have to look at, it's called the turn, right? But it's how fast are your products turning over. I have some big pieces here that are here for a long time. And quite honestly, because I have them loaded down with all kinds of home decor items out in the front, people don't necessarily look at them and think of buying them. They look at the home decor items and look at those to be able to buy. So I have a lot of flexibility because I'm selling a lot of other elements like the paints, etc., that do turn over a lot faster and generate a greater profit for me. But I have a lot of items like this that get displayed and used as examples of certain techniques and certain looks until they sell. Then I have the pictures I can use to be able to talk to people about them. But a lot of times people want to see, what does that color look like? How did you do that? Oh, that would be a good use of that. So I have them as examples until they sell. But something like this little table, I'm gonna price at a price to make it sell quickly. I don't need to hang on to this for an extended period of time. And when you start with something that was only $3.50 to begin with, it makes sense to take advantage of that. Increases the return on my investment, but again, I'm not going to do something that required so much labor or so much expense that I price it out of being able to move it. Hope this one gave you a couple of tips along the way, if only to be able to make some really good looking stripes. I look forward to seeing you on the next one. As always, let me know your thoughts. And until then, take care.